Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions, how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in.
Hello, my guest today is Taiwan-based Vietnamese American social entrepreneur, activist, vegan chef, and co-founder and CEO of Cha, Mai Bach. Hi, Mai, and Happy New Year, and welcome to Curito Connects.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I actually can't pinpoint. Maybe you can refresh my memory here on how we first met, but I want to say it was through our mutual friend Daisy, maybe?
It was either Daisy or I'm trying to think back now. I vaguely remember someone saying, "Have you met Jennifer?" And then I think I was already following you on Instagram or something, and I sent you a message, and it was like,
"Oh no!" But we met way before then.
Yeah,
like
right.
Because so it was like Daisy.
Oh. Yes. Now when you first mentioned it, I didn't remember, but now it's hitting me.
Yeah. So shout out to Daisy. She introduced us because I was trying to find a vegan caterer for an event for work, a company I was at before, and that's how I got connected to you. Actually, I think that's when it started. That was many years ago.
Yes.
Maybe about a decade ago. And also about a decade ago, Taiwan didn't really have any like westernized vegan vegetarian food scene.
Yeah.
We do have a vegetarian vegan food scene here, but it's very much associated with like Buddhism and the religion groups.
Yes.
So it's very Asianified, if I can say.
It's more spiritual based and religious based. Yeah.
And more Chinese cooking.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that has definitely changed since you guys started, and slowly many other restaurants, we have several now, more westernized vegetarian vegan restaurants in Taipei, or in Taiwan now as well. And basically also in the global food scene, it's also changed a lot too.
Yes.
Even fine dining is offering it now too.
I know. 11 Madison Park. Hello. Yeah.
Okay, so today Mai would like to talk about being kind to yourself, and I think we can always have more people remind us about this mindset, couldn't we?
Yes.
So I will stop here and I'll have you start off by introducing yourself to the audience and explain how a Southern Californian girl with no roots to Taiwan ended up moving out here over 15 years ago and started a business here, and why being kind to yourself is the mantra you want to lead us with in this conversation today.
Well, thanks for that amazing intro. Obviously, you can't see me, but when people do that intro and then I'm there, it does kind of make me cringe a little bit. And that feeling obviously brings up like the being kind to yourself, right? It's like, how do I actually not be uncomfortable with hearing those things and being like, yeah, that's me. That's who I am. Like having those titles can be kind of aggressive. And yeah, it can make you cringe and be like, that's like so awkward, to be like, I'm this. But I'm this year really trying to be like, that's who I am.
Embrace it.
And that's who I am, right? It's neither, I'm not boasting, but I'm also not trying to like make myself smaller about it. It's just, that's where I am. So I am from Southern California. I was born and raised. My mom is a refugee from the Vietnam War. So she fled in 75, 76. And at the time, she was pregnant with my brother, about 8 or 9 months pregnant with my brother, and had my sister who was 4 years old. And so they boarded a boat, like legit, like one of those small boats that you've seen, and made the journey over to the U.S. So during that journey, she actually went into labor. And at the time, obviously, people were dying, falling into the ocean. And she, luckily, their whole boat was saved by a decommissioned cargo ship. And she gave birth on that, and then they all came over to the U.S. So then my other brother and I were born in Southern California. So it's been a very interesting journey because in 2008, after graduating from UCLA, my then boyfriend, now husband, so kind of threw out there like, hey, how about we go abroad and teach English for a year? And I said, okay, because at the time, I really wasn't happy doing what I was doing in LA. I was doing PR, entertainment PR. And I that was like my first inkling that I needed maybe a profession that was a little bit more fulfilling. So I said, okay, I didn't know what I was going to be doing. And he said, well, if you're coming with me, I want to go to a Mandarin speaking country, but I know China is going to be way too intense for you. I know this place called Taiwan. I know.
Spencer, how does Spencer know this place called Taiwan?
I mean, this was...
And Spencer's Caucasian, right?
Yeah, Spencer is blonde hair, blue eyes from San Diego. He's a nerdy surfer guy. Like, he loves, like, board games and, like, magic. But if you were to see him, you would never think that. Yeah, he studied Mandarin when we were at UCLA together, so it was one of his majors, and he had a lot of language exchange partners who
came from
Taiwan. And so he knew he would, learn about it, and he, saw all their photos, and they had all told him, like, the Mandarin's a little bit different, but it's a much easier, like, country to move around. And so he had done a trip in China the summer before we graduated, and he confirmed China is a very difficult place to kind of navigate, like coming straight from the US. So he said, okay, why don't we soft land in Taiwan? We can get our bearings in Asia, and then we can go to China. And then, like, our first year, we decided to stay and teach in Taiwan, and it was a rough first year, but we ended up deciding, okay, let's give it another year, because we didn't really live in the city. We didn't have many friends. Like, our jobs, like, we were only working like 2 or 3 hours a day. So we said, like, okay, let's give Taiwan another year. And so we moved into the city and started really actively looking for a network. And so we joined, like, kickboxing and like a few different groups. And we wanted to be active, and we made some friends that way. And
So you skipped all the partying stuff? That's what...
No, we were in the mountains the first year. Like, we lived far into the mountains past Xingdian. We had, like, no friends. We couldn't get into the city.
Okay.
Yeah, there was no partying that first year. It was just like, where are we that first year? And then the second year, then we kind of, like, we made friends. We started going out. We started hanging out. We started exploring the city more. And we liked it. But then, like, we really wanted to travel. So we decided to take everything we had made that second year and travel for 6 months, backpack through China and Southeast Asia. The intention was to actually leave Taiwan.
Okay.
We packed up everything. We had a cat. We sent the cat back to the US to Spencer's dad, who he still has, that cat.
Wow.
She's still around. She's really cute. Her name's Fila. And we did a 6 months backpacking kind of trip around China and Southeast Asia with the intention to find a new place to land.
Okay.
Since he picked Taiwan the first time, it was my turn.
Yeah.
So I said, Shanghai. I was like, let's do it. Let's, like, big city. It's in China. This was prior to the 6 months of backpacking. By the end of 6 months of backpacking, we landed back in Shanghai on my decision. And for some reason, I just stood in that airport and I was like, no. Like, we can't live here. We just can't live here.
The airport told you so.
Yeah, like, something about it. I don't know what it was. We landed back in the airport and I was just like, we can't live here. And Spencer was totally he was super happy. He's like, okay, let's go back to Taiwan. And he was, like, ready. He was ready, locked and loaded. Like, we got back to the hostel in Shanghai and he just started making phone calls.
Oh, wow.
Like, who has an apartment? Like, are there jobs?
We're
coming back. And, and then that's when we came back and made the conscious decision to, like, live in Taiwan. Like, before we were nomadic, right? We decided no roots. Like, we didn't purchase like a nice chair. Like that makes such a huge difference in your mindset when you're like, this is going to be my home.
Yeah. Versus like, we're just here temporarily. We're going to leave soon. Not purchasing anything.
Yeah. Like we're just going to like find furniture off the street because we're only going to be here for a year, right? So we made the conscious decision that we were going to be here for a little while. And so we like invested a little bit in our life here. And that made a huge difference in the quality of our lives in Taiwan and like how we viewed Taiwan and how we were engaging with it. So yeah, that's kind of how the next 5 years went. Or the next 3 years. So the next.
And at this point, you guys are still teaching English?
We are still teaching English. The next 3 years, we're teaching English. But then that's when we started to feel like, okay, what's the next step? And we said, we could go back to the U.S., but Taiwan has like a unique opportunity for us to explore like starting something on our own. Like the barrier of entry is pretty low here, right? And so we're like, okay, what am I passionate about right now at the moment? Spencer was more just passionate about like education and having something of his own. So he kind of like defaulted to me. At the time, I was really learning about veganism and like the impacts of our food system on the earth and like all how everything was kind of like interconnected. So
did you like watch a documentary at this point that was like, oh my gosh, this is my calling?
I read a book called Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, and he's like a really great fiction writer. So, but he wrote this nonfiction book about his journey into kind of investigative journalism and what he found. And it was just like, they're very powerful stories. Obviously, he's an amazing writer. And from his perspective, him telling everything he found, it immediately just made me go like, what am I doing? Like, how am I opting into this? And so that was 2010, right before we went on our backpacking trip. Yeah, so that was also a weird transition of me being like 180, no more meat, like no more animals, and then we're taking off for 6 months. Question mark.
How are we gonna do this?
Yeah, I'm trying to transition my whole diet, my whole lifestyle, and then we're also just gonna be backpacking. So that was also an interesting time. It did take a little bit of a toll on my health because I made this transition without educating myself and like how I should be eating and what I need to look for now that I'm taking like certain things out of my diet. So that spurred a whole different kind of rabbit hole of learning about like nutrition and how food is so important for your body and like how to feed it well. And that was like the major transition when we came back to Taiwan, is now I was starting to learn how to cook at home and feed ourselves with like really nutritious food, because at the time in Taiwan, it was very difficult to find like whole food restaurants, right?
Yes.
Like actual places focused on healthy food, but healthy not in like the trendy marketing term, right? Like it like very fundamentally focusing on non-processed whole foods. So we were eating that way for like 3 years, and the people around us started to get really curious about what I was doing, especially the green smoothies. Like I would blend up these like super green smoothies, like just chock full of raw leafy greens and fruits, and taking them to school with us and drinking them. And they would be like, what are you guys drinking? Those things look insane. Like they're like the craziest green, which is funny because like green is like one of the most natural colors in the world.
You walk outside and then the trees have beautiful green leaves,
but
and the grass is green.
It's not associated here with
stop
like
and go sign. It's green.
what you should be eating, which was like such a disconnect, right? Like to think that we were doing something so wild as like eating this green food. So they started asking if they could try it, and then they're like, oh, like actually this tastes good, it's really healthy for me. And like I would kind of like slowly tell them about it, and then they started ordering like smoothies from me, and now that was when we were like, oh, maybe there is something here. And like the kids, the biggest thing is where the kids were starting to get interested in it, and they wanted it, and the parents were like, how did you get
my kids to
drink that?
Because they don't even like to eat the vegetables that are green that
Yeah.
I stir fry at home for them.
Yeah, so for us, we're just basically like, kids are sponges. They just model everything they see around them, right? And like, if you don't think it's weird, they don't think it's weird.
That's right. Yeah.
And they do obviously are sensitive. Their palates are different. That's, to be fair, their kids' palates are different than adult palates, so they can be more sensitive to certain things. So just, like, don't force them into things. But if you don't think it's weird, they're going to be naturally curious about it.
Yeah.
And we'll give it a try. So that was like our first inkling of like, oh, maybe there's something here. And for us, for me, the passion was the food opened up kind of like an opening for us to have the conversations that I was more interested about, like how food is so connected to like the health of our bodies, our minds, but more than that, the like health of our planet. Mm-hmm. And how like our food systems right now are just so bad for everyone involved, like on every level, not just environmentally, but in terms of like the communities that they're in. Like unfortunately, if you're near like a pig farm, your community is going to be decimated with like breathing disorders and like different kinds of cancers because of the way they dispose of the waste. Mm-hmm. They just spray it in the air. And it's like, it has to go somewhere. So those communities are just breathing in like really terrible like
toxins,
pig poop all the time, right? It's just sprayed into the air as fertilizer and it just gets carried in the wind. So, and then you go deeper and it's like, where are they putting these farms? It's not in wealthy communities, obviously, right? And it's in communities that generally have no voice, right? And they're marginalized. And so it's all very connected, right?
Yes.
And
yes. That's why it's called an ecosystem.
Yes, it's an ecosystem. And so, there's lots of people that, there's lots of people doing this work, right? And I'm so constantly trying to learn about like how we can contribute and how Utrecht can contribute to that. For me, unfortunately, like we had no idea what we were jumping into. Opening a cafe and getting into food and beverage. Like both of our backgrounds are not in that. He's an economics major. I'm communications, global studies. We both obviously worked growing up. Like we both worked in like juice shops and like different kind of service industry. But you're not getting the full picture, obviously. So yeah, that was a very eye-opening experience, opening a cafe for the first time.
Also as foreigners in Taiwan.
Yes, that too. That does add another fun layer, being, not fully...
part of the community.
Yeah, not fully part of the community, the language, fluent in the language, yeah, so...
Was that hard at the time when you guys did it? Or because you were teaching students and you were part of a community, like within the school system, you were able to get the support you needed to open the first location, which was also near the school?
We felt supported. Like the parents came out and like, supported us. And we also had two very close Taiwanese friends that helped us open this space. Like they were like, yeah, we want to join you. We want to help you get this launched. They were integral to us like being successful that first year. Like one of them had a marketing background, so she was able to use some of her contacts to really let them know what we were doing. And then our other friend had worked with a food and beverage brand on the like HR hiring side, so she knew a lot of like the compliance and like what we needed to be doing.
Sounds like a perfect team.
Yeah, it was like it kind of, I look back on it now and realize how lucky we were that they came on board, because I don't think we knew professionally how great they were and how integral they were at the time, because we were just trying to like open up, right, and survive. And so I really appreciate that they took such a huge risk doing this crazy thing with like two foreigners, right? And opening up like something so niche, but people really gravitated towards it. So we immediately saw that this was like an inflection point of people being very interested in healthy food.
Yeah.
So not necessarily like the environmental conversation or the impact conversation, they were very interested in like learning about where their food came from and how it affects your body. And, everyone selfishly is worried about their health, right? Like you, of course, want to live as long as you can, be healthy and functioning for as long as you can. So that was the conversations we were leading with at the time. Yeah.
So that's how you guys ended up staying and starting a business here.
Yes, it has been a wild ride. And so, we've been doing Ujjayi for almost 10 years now. This 2023 is us coming into our 10th year. So in November, we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's going to be a big milestone. Who knows what's going to bring in the next year, but we're excited. We're really excited.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So what do you think were some of the... it sounds like the book really changed you, and that was a very pivotal moment for you in terms of impacting you on how you saw the world and yourself in terms of changing your diet to better the ecosystem and then really trying to educate more people about this movement. Well, I shouldn't really say movement, because it's actually really how humanity has always started, right? Like with our soil and growing things and being in line with like the nature, right?
Yes.
Sun and rainwater and growing food and harvesting and all that. It's just that these days we're kind of out of sync with that
Correct.
lifestyle.
Yes.
So it's more about re-educating humans and community about this. What would you say were some of the other pivotal moments in this decade journey that you've been on, like you said earlier, as a foreigner living in Taiwan, starting an F&B business in a category that is very foreign to the market as well, in terms of how that relates to what you've learned about being kind to yourself as we started the conversation where you
so I think the professional journey has really informed my personal journey, because without it, I don't think I would have been pushed so out of my comfort zone to have to confront like all these kind of coping mechanisms and like habits I had built up over the years, obviously subconsciously, right? And you don't realize you're building all these coping mechanisms. And so probably like 2017 was probably one of our hardest years as first-time entrepreneurs and us trying to grow the business. We made one or two very hard and maybe bad decisions in terms of our like financial journey with the business. And so we took some big risks and they didn't pay off. And so it put us in a very like precarious situation with the business. And so it was very hard for us at the time, especially me, to feel like I made that decision and I failed the company. And that was like my first actual like breakdown. Like I was crying in the bathroom, in the bathtub, like just letting water fall on me for like 3 hours. And I was just sobbing because I felt like I just failed everyone, right? Like completely, like it was on me. I'm the CEO. I'm supposed to be leading this. I made this decision. I wanted this. And it just put the company at risk. Like we could lose everything. So that was probably like one of the first times where I really realized how much I negatively talked to myself. I think that was like one of the first times, because I'd never felt that way before. Like maybe in my teenage years, I had been hard on myself, or like I put undue pressure on myself. But after that episode, obviously it wasn't like after 3 hours I came out and I was like, why did I do that to myself? It was, like maybe a year later.
I don't think that ever works.
Yeah, right?
It's always in hindsight.
Yeah. Like maybe a year later, I was thinking about that episode and reflecting on it, more space. And I think that's when I started to recognize how much like pressure I put on myself and like perfectionism. And I kind of used to view my perfectionism as something good, right? I think most
perfectionist.
yeah,
so,
like I'm so, like
meticulous.
everything has to be right, and so that's a very good thing, right? And so kind of all like these different things, I started to notice them, right? And like kind of catalog them a little bit more. And back then I used to be very negative about it, like be like, oh, I do this, like why am I like this? Or like, did this cause this? Like was I, because of the way I do this, did this happen, right?
Wow.
And so I was like pretty negative about the decisions I was making. And then it caused, the ripple effect was, then I started to question every decision that I was making, right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
You lose your confidence, right? I'm just like, I became frozen. Like it became a point where, Spencer would ask me a question about the business, like strategically, should we do this? And then be like, I don't know. I couldn't face the decisions, the conversations, because I felt like I was no longer capable of rationally thinking through what was good for the business.
So
right?
at this point, what did you do?
At that point, I pretty much like handed things over to Spencer.
Oh, okay.
So luckily for me, I had like a really great partner, a business partner and husband. And, obviously it's not perfect all the time, but we do complement each other really well. And he stepped in and he started making some decisions, right? And like saying, okay, we're gonna go this way and we're gonna do this. Mm-hmm. And that's when we decided to take the technology building space and open a second location and try to rebuild from there. And yeah, I just threw myself into like the day-to-day operations and stopped thinking about the mission and the larger picture, and was just trying to like get through the day, right? And so like 2017 to 2018 were really hard years for us professionally. Obviously it took some toll on us, like our marriage and personally, but it was more like I just became very sad, like just so sad, like
depression.
Now that I reflect back on it,
So
it's definitely
depressed.
I was depressed. At the time I would never say that, right? Again, hindsight. At the time you're never going to be like, I'm depressed.
Also,
right?
I think as Asians,
yeah,
you don't go around telling people I'm depressed.
Yeah, like I'm having a depressive episode right now.
I need to go see my therapist.
Yeah, like therapist, what?
Like,
is that even
are
in the
you
vocabulary?
okay? Yeah. But
So luckily, Spencer, without even having to say it, right? He was there to kind of support and pick me up. But I could also see that he was struggling, right? And it was really hard for me to see because, do you follow Enneagram at all? Enneagrams?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
A little bit.
So I'm an Enneagram 2, and like my default is, like my core fear is not being loved. And that manifests as like really loving to help people and uplift people and like being very like empathic and things like that. And so
it was hard
when I say him struggling, it was like then taking another toll on me, because it's like, why can't you step up to like take some of this burden to help him? It was like this really toxic cycle, right? It was just like making me sadder because I was sad, and then it was bad. So it was just like all hands on deck, grow the business, make this location work. However we're gonna do it, right? And I realized I started to withdraw a lot. So Spencer had suggested like maybe we should start networking a little bit more and start meeting more people in the community and, seeing what our options are. And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. And so then, I started meeting a lot of people, and we got introduced somehow into like the startup scene. And I really got inspired by the people that are working with startups, because they are so motivated and visionary. And not to say it's not, now that I look back on that, it's not good or bad. Right? At the time, I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing and it's so cool. And like, wow, they're like growing these huge companies. And I was looking at that with like a lens of like admiration. I realize why I felt that way now. At the time, I don't have that same outlook. But at the time, it was actually helpful for me to kind of ease me out of, I think, my depression.
Yeah.
And
it gave you that extra boost of
confidence
and
it was like the motivation.
Yeah.
It was really, I can't say that I'm still working on my confidence today. At the time, it was more like motivation. Whether it was externally motivated, it just helped me start to want to do things. The bigger picture things. And so I was really thankful that happened at that time. And then COVID happened.
And you're like, when is this ever going to end?
So then we entered into COVID because then 2019 actually started to be like a really good year for us. Like we hit break even with the location, and we were starting to make money, and we were meeting like so many new people in the community, and we were starting to engage with a lot of the groups that we wanted to be supporting, right? And being able to give them the space to meet and do the work that they wanted to do. So it was kind of all starting to feel like it was coming together, and we were like watching like our mission start to align with the business, and we're like, yay! And then
it's going in the direction that
we're like, it's trending up.
And then hi COVID.
Yeah, then hi COVID. We went home December 2019 for a visit. Then that was when the first inklings of something happening in China started to come out. And then we flew back, and then February is when Taiwan shut their borders, and we're like, what does that mean? Like, what's gonna happen? And like immediately we could see, all of our tourists and expats were gone, right? And yeah, so then
was that quite core of your business? Like,
it was a good percent. Like, it was like at least 20% of our normal customers, right? And students, and then the students started to fade away. And we're like, oh God, this is going to be rough. And we're seeing everything happening in the world, right? We're seeing talks of like these lockdowns and quarantines and, just like no big gatherings. And that was part of core of that space, is a community gathering space. Yeah. And so luckily for like 2020, Taipei was somewhat shielded from everything. But that also meant we're slowly bleeding out, right? It wasn't like a straight lockdown. So the government didn't really feel responsibility necessarily to help businesses out. Because we could technically be open.
Yes.
Right?
But people weren't coming out.
People were sick. People were scared. Yeah. People weren't coming out.
Lots of people were scared.
Yeah, a lot, and understandably so. And so we don't feel any anger or anything towards the people, because it's like, everyone was scared, right? And it's not on the consumer to be like, well, I'm gonna put myself at risk to go support this mom and pop shop. So we totally understand that. But then it was like, well, like, how are we gonna survive this? Like, we can't operate. Technically we can operate, but we can't operate. So that was like 2020, and then 2021 is when Taiwan actually felt the effects of COVID and started, doing an actual lockdown. And then it just dragged on, right? And then we went through community spread in 2022. So it was like these waves of just like being battered. And so in 2022, in May, we decided, when community spread happened, we're like, Taiwan's not going to offer any support. So we probably have to close that big location because its core was a community space. And so we kind of had to reevaluate having that space. And so we had an opportunity with another location, and we said, okay, we'll just move technology to this space. And so we let go of the physical manifestation of that location and are moving it to another location. Yeah. So, in that 2022, that was another, like, letting go of that space, that physical space, was hugely crushing. Because Spencer and I literally built that space. Like, he had wood tools, like, we did demo,
the nail,
we painted, we literally built that space. And so for us, it was like crushing to let it go. And we just had to survive in June, get it all packed up, move it to the new location, and say goodbye to it. And then I just retreated. Like, I again, Spencer gave me the space because we had opened up Hsinchu at this time. Hsinchu was opening up. He gave me the space to just kind of like hermit and hibernate and like recover. And so for like 2 or 3 months, I just focused on trying to like get house chores done every day, keep our space like somewhat peaceful, and move and like eat healthy food. Like I was just like, because during that time I had so many health issues because of all the chronic stress and like not dealing with stuff. So many health issues. Like I got diagnosed with like everything you can think of, like thyroid problem, PCOS, fibromyalgia, a specific kind of arthritis, like because like my joints were locking up. Like one day I couldn't even flex my knee. Like I had to wear a brace and like use crutches, and there was no physical thing wrong with it. Like we went to the hospital and he's just like, I don't see anything. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't bend my knee. So it was like I was getting lockjaw basically around different parts of my body. And, you know, no one could tell me why it was happening. Somewhere deep down, obviously, I knew this was all stress related, but I just wanted like an easy out. Like, give me a pill so that I don't feel this pain anymore. But I think during that like quiet time, I realized like there is no easy way out. I have to start like intentionally trying to figure out what's happening with me, right? And like whatever that means, like meditating, which I've always been so against. Not against, but like, you know, like
say it as it is, it's fine.
Not against it, like so judgmental about it, right? A little anti, be like, I don't need meditation. Like, what? I can't do that. How am I supposed to sit there for, you know?
And how do you feel now?
I do think it's like, it's so hard. It's like probably one of the hardest things for me to like keep up with and maintain. But I do feel a difference. Like you do feel space. And I think one of the misconceptions is this idea of meditation means a clear mind, right? And everyone's always like, how am I not supposed to think about things, right? And I think that's like one of the maybe misconceptions that people have that make it really hard for people to want to start meditating. But then I had some friends really give me some resources. What was his name? He had an app, like a science-based meditation. Sam. I can't remember it now, but that was kind of like the entry point for me because it was backed by science and I'm like very logical in that way. Okay. And
it's okay. You'll let me know and I'll put it in the episode resources.
And the way he approached it was very like, okay, this is what's happening when you meditate and you breathe this way. It's causing these responses. And I super responded to that. Like I love that he was explaining why these things are happening in your body rather than it's all feeling based, right? Like I can't connect with that. Cannot. So like super logical, very practical. So I'm very feeling and very emotional, but like I need to know why things are happening. And it resonates more with me if I can connect and understand fully why these things are happening and why it's good for my body. And then why it creates this amazing feeling, right? And so
you were being kind to yourself.
Yeah. That's, I think, probably the first meditation. I didn't have the words for it, right? Yeah. But like doing the meditation, just focusing on me was being kind to myself, was self-care. Yes. Right? You think about self-care as like, I'm going to go get a massage or like, you know, I'm going to get my nails done or something like that. But it's more like the act of making space for yourself. Like, how do you love yourself and make the decisions that are good for you? That's being kind to yourself, right? And if you can do that, then, you know, it's so cliche, but it's like you can't love other people until you love yourself. Right? Like you won't have the space to really be your best self if you can't take care of yourself first.
It's not cliche.
I know. I mean, it's like, it's so true, but that's why it's cliche, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like everyone says it, and I think you don't feel it until you experience it.
Yeah, but that's how a lot of these things are, right?
Yeah.
Like if we had met, 6 years ago and we were sitting here talking about this stuff, it's not going to be the same conversation, and
Definitely.
And that's why all these philosophers and all these books for centuries, they all say same, and same with religions, right?
Yes.
It's all same.
Yeah.
But until you go through it yourself and you have the aha, then you won't really be able to apply it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's no matter how many people tell you, again, the same sayings, some of us, everyone's path is different. Some of us still won't understand it until you personally experience it. Yeah. Others may get it without having to experience it straight off.
Yeah.
Because they function in that way, and that's wonderful. But it's all within due time, right? Everyone's journey is a little bit different.
It's like those things, like you know it. You've heard it so much, you know it in your brain, but to like fully embody it, internalize it, and like to have like feeling like in your heart to actually feel it is so different, right? Like it's like, you should love yourself, but how do you do that, right? You can't just wake up and be like, I love me, right? That's not going to get you there, right? It's a start. Not to say like, definitely like waking up and saying, I love me every day is a start, but it's not like, I think that the how part is so different for everyone. And I love, even though social media takes like such a toll on me personally, I love that it's become a tool that people can share all the different ways they've kind of come to this realization. Mm-hmm. And that means all different kinds of people can find what resonates with them and their path to it, right? There's not one way to do it.
It's not one formula.
There's not one formula. And I feel like in the past, only certain voices would get raised to the top, and it makes it seem like there's one path to like enlightenment or like love or whatever. And so for me, like the science-based stuff I've realized really resonates with me. If you can give me the science behind it and tell me like how it affects my brain or like what kind of chemical responses are happening, it will make me be like, I gotta do this, right? Like I'm like, there's a few people now that I'm listening to, and the way they come at it, it just like it actually makes me like tingle in my body. Like I'm like, yes, this is what is gonna make me like want to stay with this, right? Yeah.
Oh, amazing! What a few years you've had.
Yes.
And I'm so glad I'm catching you at the beginning of this year. I feel like this is a year of after working on all that the last few years, you're moving, the wheel is turning, you're moving forward.
I mean, thanks so much for giving me the space to reflect on this, because I don't think I've actually thought about like chronologically how I've come to this space. Like I just know I'm kind of like in this kind of space right now, but thinking about like your question about like the moments, can you like reflect on the moments that kind of triggered these things? And I haven't necessarily thought about them in a long time. You don't always want to think about like your darkest moments, right? Like let's go back there.
Yeah, but this and thank you for bringing that up, because I think for with Curito Connects, I think that's really essentially what I would like to hope to get my guests to share in these conversations. To your point of allowing others to resonate with the different stories that are being shared, right? Because everyone's journey is different, and everyone's way of finding or valuing what they see in the world, what they define as joy for them, or how they overcame certain things, and for some people it might not be a struggle or darkness, quote unquote, right? Like it's just a choice, a life choice in switching paths. It has been so fascinating having all these different guests from all walks of life come through and share these different stories. But I think at the end of the day, it really is just how you choose, in what mindset you have, in what point in your life you're in, to shape that storyline for yourself, right? It's really all comes down again to what you're saying today. Yourself, and being kind to yourself, because it's yours. It's no one else's.
Correct. Super correct. And it's so simple. And there's a podcaster, Mel Robbins, that I like to listen to, because she comes back very like science, like she does a lot of research. She loves everything to be science based, and like she creates these like very fun tools from it. So like one of her newest books is called The High Five Habit. And it's very simple. It's like the first thing when you wake up, like high five yourself in the mirror. And it sounds so silly, right? You're like, I'm not going to do that. But then she talks about the science of why doing that actually causes like certain chemical releases in your brain, and like why this simple thing will trigger these things. And it's so fascinating, like why it does that. Like you would never think high-fiving yourself in the mirror would do that, but it does, right? And then you try it and you're like, oh my God, it works. You're like, what is this, right? Because if you just heard it and you didn't hear like for me, if I just didn't hear the explanation, I would never try it, right? I'd feel like that sounds so stupid, right? But hearing like her explanation of why it works and how it can kind of change your mood immediately and like certain things, and then you try it and you're kind of like, it did make me laugh like out loud, and like you know,
laughing is good for you,
and laughing is super good for you because and then but it also like forces you to kind of be kind to yourself, like immediately, like you look at yourself and you can't, we are conditioned to associate high-fiving with positive situations, right? Like you don't high-five someone when like you're in a bad mood, or like,
oh, you lost, high five.
Yeah, high five, or like, you know, I hate you, high five, you know, like you don't associate high fives with negative situations. Your brain's just wired that way, like growing up. So high-fiving yourself is like immediately like a positive affirmation to yourself, right? And so like that's super kind, like a really amazing way to be kind for yourself, like first thing in the morning.
Okay.
And so like kind of just like these small micro habits of that I'm kind of picking up from different people. I have a tendency to, I was diagnosed with ADHD, late diagnosed, like in the beginning of this year. And that has opened up a whole understanding of how my brain works and acceptance around it. Because it was like, up until now, it was constantly me being like, why can't my brain do this? Like, this person seems to do this so easily. How come I can't do that as easily? And I would try to like force myself to like, you know.
And then your perfectionism personality will get to you.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, why can't I do this?
Yeah. Or is there something wrong with me? Am I like not smart enough? Or like, and then you start to accept, oh, my brain is different. And that comes with a whole set of different questions, because then you start to question, is my brain different? It's a thing. But
and a whole Pandora box of sorting it out.
Yes. But fundamentally, understanding how my brain works has helped me a lot to accept that I'm just going to do things differently.
Yeah. And it's okay.
And it's okay. How weird, right? Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to be mindful of our time.
Okay.
And I am so grateful that you shared your journey with us today. And I want to end with my questions, which usually starts with a few. I always say a few questions and then people go, but there's so many questions. What keeps you grounded?
Okay.
What books or and you mentioned a few things already, but like what books or podcasts that has helped you, you know, in on this journey, and stuff that you would recommend to others. And then the last one is kind of like, what would you tell your younger self what you know now, or another way to answer this one would be like, for those who are listening to your episode, who resonate with your storyline, what would you tell them, you know, in terms of, what would you tell them that you wish someone had told you then, or or maybe not even, it's just kind of like what you know now that you would encourage or share with them.
Cool.
So that's 3 things.
Okay. Can't hold them all in my mind at once.
Yeah,
so let's go.
I can repeat them again.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, so number 1 is what keeps me grounded.
Yeah.
Wow. Actually, my husband keeps me very grounded.
Yay,
like,
Spencer.
Yeah, Spencer is like we're really good foils for each other. Like,
excellent.
And so like if I start, and it's funny because we've commented this, like if he starts to get really low, I'm very high usually, like naturally.
The
and then
frequency,
And like when I start to get very sad, he's like in a more happy, comfortable space. And so like we kind of
balance
somehow like bring each other back.
Okay.
And like, yeah, I become more comfortable with expressing like my fears and what I'm going through. I used to be very scared of him judging me about it.
It
Like,
takes a lot to be able to be vulnerable and open, even with someone you're married with.
yeah, and been with since I was 20 years old, right?
Communication, huh?
And that's been a learning curve, right? And so being able to express that and him just immediately being like, it's fine, don't worry about that, you know, or like, I can do that, I can step up and do that, right? Like, he's very grounding in that way and pulls me back to like, it's not the end of the world, it's not the apocalypse. And I think it's not just him necessarily, it's more like family. Like my family will do that as well. And it's just remembering like,
you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You have that support network.
Yeah. And like, again, like when you're looking at like the macro problems we face as like a society and like like humankind, can feel really overwhelming. And then like
it sure can.
It can feel super sad and like insurmountable. But yeah, I think family as I get older really is my grounding space. Yeah, is for me.
Beautiful.
I think a lot of people, hopefully. And if you don't have a family, you can always, you know, build your own. Like it's not blood that makes family. Yeah.
So yeah, books and podcasts are, you know, things that
Oh, man.
really helped you along the way that resonated with. So you mentioned the meditation app, Mel Robbins.
Yeah,
you mentioned
Mel
as well.
Robbins, like she was really great because she is so vulnerable with her struggles, but then also talks about how like the very small micro habits that helped change her like daily routine.
Yes, we remember now. High fives.
Yeah, high five habit. But she also does like just like breathing techniques when you're like feeling anxiety or like compression on your chest to help like calm your parasympathetic nervous system when it goes into like, it's like just very small things that are doable. I think for me, with a lot of maybe like self-help, it can seem like it's so hard to take that first step.
But hers is very applicable.
Super easy to just start like putting into your life and in practice right away.
Nice.
And then she'll also give you tips on like how to habit stack in a way that actually sticks.
Mm-hmm. That you can really integrate into your life.
Yeah. And so she's been really good. And someone that I've kind of discovered recently, like very recently, so I can't say for certain like I agree with everything he says, but like the way he approaches mental health is pretty cool. His name is Dr. Amen, Amen. He blew up on TikTok because of his like the way he talks about mental health, and it's all through the lens of brain health.
Okay.
Which seems so logical, but it is revolutionary because it's really basic. He says, you know, like if you're a cardiologist, you're looking at the heart, the organ, and how do you heal that, right? And every doctor does this except for like the psychiatry field. It's more like symptom based. And he's like, but our mind is our brain. And if we don't look at the organ, how do you get a full picture of mental health? And he's been doing it for 40 years. He's like 68. And you can look at his like TikTok and Instagram. He's so like alert and lively and like just knows what he's talking about. And he's just basically talking about like brain health is the key to the mental health like epidemic that's happening.
Beautiful.
Right. And so he's been a really cool find recently.
Okay.
And yeah, now I'm kind of like really thinking about my brain more and like how to keep that healthy and like, are we getting enough vitamins? And like, I mean, it's not just like the food side. The food is really integral, but like your habits. For him, his thing is like first waking up in the morning, asking, and positivity is like really key for your brain, is just saying today is going to be a good day.
And high five. He should
and then he should high five himself. But like it's the
five.
same thing. Like if you start your day on a positive note, it changes everything for your brain. And then so he has also like micro habits that you can implement into your brain that could drastically change your brain health. And he's seen in brain scans, like you can actually heal your brain. Like it's not like it's not an all or nothing thing. Like you can actually continuously heal your brain and make it better. Yeah. So he's a good find. He was super good find. So those two are kind of like, and like ADHD TikTok has also been really helpful.
Okay.
And learning more about resources. And so then I kind of got on to like ADHD. It's a magazine called Attitude. And that has helped really to understand the research and everything behind how our brains function and how lacking the research is for girls and women with ADHD and how it manifests in us.
Okay.
It's like similar along all like medical research, right? It's always biased towards men.
Okay.
And how they function and what's good for them. And it's not always the same for us, right? We're very different creatures, like in terms of our hormones and our bodies. And so ADHD manifests in females very differently. And needs to be handled very differently and judged very differently. So there's still a lot of like stigma, I think, around it. And like, I think it's changing a lot. But like, funny enough, I'm not actually on TikTok, so I just see like the stuff that gets moved over to Instagram.
Okay.
But like a lot of that like really short consumable information works really well in my brain. And then if it triggers me, I go into something called hyperfocus, which then I just like go deep dive like straight into it and become
an expert in that area
in like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Like I can just consume everything. Not even smart. It's just like we crave what like tickles our brains, right? And
that's
like
a good way to put it. Tickles our brain.
Tickles your brain. And so that's kind of where I'm at, right? In terms of like the things that I'm consuming right now.
Okay. And then the last one.
What was the last question?
Like your 2 cent words of wisdom. What would you tell your younger self? What would you tell those listeners out there who are listening to this particular episode, who know you or resonate with your storyline?
I would say, okay, so the theme of our conversation was being kind to yourself. And like my, I guess, words of wisdom, if I have any right now, are things take time. Like I'm super impatient and I would always be like, why, like judging and comparing myself to other people, either my same age or younger, and being like, I'm not as blah, blah, blah as that person. I don't have this blah, blah, blah. And that is probably like one of the most dangerous things you can do for your mind and your mental health, is start comparing yourself to other people. And everyone's journey takes time. And whether you know it or you don't, like that other person that you're comparing yourself, they also are on a journey and it's taking time.
That's correct. Yeah.
Just like whatever amount of time it takes you to get there, that's like your journey and it's okay.
And just honor it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for your sharing.
Oh, thanks for being such like a great host, and I feel so comfortable with you, just like unloading everything on my deepest, darkest secrets. So I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Of course, and all the best.
Thanks.
To Uchacha.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.